Chapter 9. After Sonia stepped inside the tiny house on a story boulevard, nobody even noticed that she was there. Nate and Tony were standing in the dining room, busy at work near a long dark wooden table, one you just knew held about 1,000 pounds of ziti over the years, which was now drowning in paperwork. Type reports covered in highlighter ink and crime scene photos that looked grim under the cheap, low-hanging chandelier. Over by the china cabinet, filled with dusty little ceramic saints, was this big cork board looking like a serial killer's scrapbook. It was covered in grainy photos, maps of the Bronx, and notes scribbled on napkins, pinned next to official documents. Nate and Tony were staring at the cork board, deep in it as they pinned even more paperwork into the crowded space. Sonia's eyes drifted over to the board, zeroing in on that photo of those three blurry shapes. The men looking mostly like shadows. She wished she could hit rewind on her memory, play it back in slow motion, and catch a reflection in a car window or something. Get a look, just one clear look. She was lost in that thought until Tony finally lit the way from the board. He wasn't wearing a suit like he always did in the office, just jeans and an old Met shirt. He gave her a tired but real smile, not the quick nod she usually got from him.
Hey, Sonny. Welcome to the madness.
He laughed. She managed to smile back, then said hello, just as an older woman shot out the kitchen doorway. Her dark graying hair was pulled back tight, and her apron was smeared with flour. With Nate's attention still focused on the board, Tony introduced Sonia to his wife, Teresa. Then, before Sonia knew it, Teresa was trying to feed her.
You look hungry. So skinny. Sit down,
She commanded, already turning back toward the kitchen.
I'm making pasta con sarde, but good way. You never had nothing like it.
Pasta what? Sonia wondered as she sat at the long table. Sounded foreign, not like the rest or she grown up on. Then, 10 minutes later, Teresa slid this bowl in front of her, steam rising, smelling wild and fishy. Sardines, pine nuts, and pasta. This was a first for her, but it was crazy good. Sonia watched as Nate and Tony bounced theories off each other, as she scarfed down her food like she'd been starved for weeks. Sonia finished off her warm pasta, staring at Tony, still up at the corkboard, talking a mile a minute, and stabbing his finger at those fuzzy people in the photos. Sonia just leaned her chin in her hand, trying to follow, but mostly just feeling the food coma kicking in. Then Teresa's voice cut through Tony's mumbling. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, her hands planted on her hips.
Help me, mate.
She sighed loudly.
All this beautiful food I cooked up is getting cold, and you two haven't even touched it.
We're working here, T.
Tony grunted, with his eyes still locked on the picture, like it held all the secrets to the case.
You hear him?
Teresa chuckled as she walked over to Sonia's side of the table.
He complains when there's no food on the table. Then I cook. He lets it sit there like garbage. Pazon.
Then Teresa turned to Sonia, asking her,
So you really gonna join this crew, huh?
She gestured her chin toward Tony and Nate.
Just so you know what you're getting into, honey. Late nights, stuck here in my dining room, listening to these two argue.
Sonia shifted in her chair, then smiled politely. No, I'm not joining the team. I'm just here to help with the case. She felt stupid saying it. What help was she? Just sitting there in the background while the men threw their theories back and forth. She glanced down at her cell phone. Only a half hour had passed since she'd gotten there, but it felt way longer. In the back of her mind, Brooklyn started calling her name. Javier was there waiting. Then Teresa looked Sonia over like she was sizing her up.
You look kinda young to be helping out with this case.
Yeah, but my father was murdered. I was with him that night and thought maybe I could help. She shrugged. But now, I don't really see how. Teresa looked over at Tony and asked,
I thought you said this case was about those missing girls. She said her father was killed.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Tony looked back at Sonia, then asked,
And you don't remember anything about that night?
Nothing, she said, pushing her chair back and standing up. I think I'm gonna leave. Nate finally looked back.
Was that a ride? That car service?
Nah, but it's okay. I can catch the train. Ben, Tony, still facing the board, cut in, voice rough but clear.
T, do me a favor. Call a cab.
Then Nate sat down at the table, finally digging into his food.
Tomorrow I'm going up to Albany. Going to speak to Rashad's daughter, Brianna.
Why you need to speak to Brianna? She wasn't kidnapped.
Right, but I see a connection between her and those missing girls. Most are from the same neighborhoods and had the same friends in common. I want to find out who introduced her to the sugar baby job. I'm starting to think that person may be connected to everybody else.
He gestured toward the board. Now with Nate no longer blocking half the board, Sonia could see the whole thing. The missing girls posters, a bunch of girls that looked just like her, girls she could have grown up with. Then, as she looked close at one of the posters, she recognized one of the faces. I know that girl, the one wearing the blue hat, Sonia said, walking over to the photo of Ashley Williams, staring into her dark brown eyes. I went to school with her. I didn't even know she was missing. I haven't seen any of these posters around the neighborhood.
That's because somebody keeps tearing them down.
Nate said mid-chew. That's so sick. Who would pull down posters of missing people? Sonia asked.
Somebody who wants her to stay missing.
Tony responded. A happy feeling came over Sonia as her eyes moved over the girls' faces. Then Nate spoke up again.
So you want to come up to Albany tomorrow?
Sonia's mind flashed back to Javier as she sighed. I can't go tomorrow, but what about Monday? He gave her a quick nod.
Yeah, Monday at work.
Javier's room was mostly dark when Sonia stepped in. Just a TV flashing blue and white lights, making shadows dance across Javier's stoic face. He was propped up against the headboard, eyes still locked on the screen. On the TV was some action flick, explosions and gunshots popping off in the background as Sonia walked over to his side of the bed. I missed you, she said, running her hand over his back.
How long we been gone? Half a day.
He mumbled, finally looking over at her, his dark eyes locking onto hers. Yeah, but still, she forced a smile. Sonia studied his expression. This wasn't the Javier that left that morning, not even close. Usually his eyes were warm, but now they were blank, flat, and cold. Before she could give Javier's coldness a second thought, his hand was reaching out and grabbing her by the waist, pulling her in tight, too tight, his fingers digging into her roughly. A lot different than his usual smooth embrace, full of familiar warmth. With Sonia's torso pressed against his chest, Javier buried his face into her neck, kissing her roughly, the scruffy hardness of his beard scraping against her soft skin. You all right? She asked as her fingers moved over his strong back. He nodded. Usually she could read Javier like her own reflection, but tonight he was all static. He didn't seem sad or even angry, just like he was somewhere else, and suddenly she was in the presence of a stranger.
You been mad busy lately. My aunt got you staying late on Saturdays, too?
No, she said, pulling away from him and quickly changing the subject. Thanks for coming back to the city early.
Of course, I didn't want to be away from you for even one night.
He was still staring at her with those blank eyes as she rummaged through a dresser drawer. Sonia stood with her back to him, but could feel his eyes piercing through her as she pulled off her blouse and kicked off her pants.
I was thinking we could go on our trip a little early, spend some real time together.
Sonia smiled, sliding beneath the sheets and cuddling up to him. Where you want to go? Martha's Vineyard?
Nah, somewhere way better.
His rough palms smoothed over her back. And where is that?
It's a surprise.
He said, not bothering to fake a smile. When you want to leave?
Tomorrow. Early, like 4 in the morning.
Her eyebrows shot up. Why so early?
I want to beat traffic. Just bring a pillow and a blanket. You can sleep the whole ride.
The next morning, they rode out of the city before the streetlights had even clicked off. Sonia fell asleep as soon as they hit the freeway. The darkness and the drone of the tires pulled her under instantly. When she woke up, soft morning sunlight was hitting her face. She checked the clock on the dashboard. 7-something in the morning. She had slept for 3 hours, but they were still driving. She stared out the window, and all around them were a bunch of trees, just endless miles of thick, dark woods blurring past. And they were on some skinny country road, nothing but 2 lanes. This wasn't the way to the shore or anywhere else Sonia knew. Hav, she said, her voice still thick with sleep. Where we at?
Upstate.
He said, not even bothering to turn his head. Okay, but where upstate? She asked, trying to keep her voice light, even though his evasiveness was annoying her.
It's a surprise.
He repeated in the same flat tone. Her eyes moved over Javier's expressionless face, then back out the window, scanning the endless wooded area surrounding them. Up ahead, she saw a small, run-down diner, the kind you usually just blow right past. But Javier turned into the dusty parking lot. The cruel coldness that Javier usually reserved for the outside world was now directed toward Sonia, and she couldn't understand why. Instead of their usual light-hearted conversations, when they were out and about in those new small towns, Javier was completely silent and expressionless. During their short relationship, Sonia never experienced this side of Javier. He was usually so chill and calm with her, never in a bad mood. Even when she make him upset, that anger seemed to roll off of him, and the next minute or two were back to normal. But this new cold shoulder he was giving her had her worried. No matter how many sweet smiles she threw his way, his expression was unchanging. So they sat in a little diner in the middle of nowhere, Sonia staring at Javier and Javier staring off into space. Jav, what's wrong? Ever since you got back from your trip, you've been in a bad mood.
I'm not in a bad mood.
He said, not bothering to remove the chill from his voice. So what did you and Rico talk about?
Mostly, we just talked about you.
She rolled her eyes.
Rico said he's still coming back, so y'all can be together.
I really wish he would just stay where he's at.
I tried to tell him to, but he said he's going to be home soon. He said the bond that you two have so real, he knows y'all are going to work things out and get back together.
She blew out an annoyed sigh. Then her eyes scanned Javier's face, noticing his strange expression. But you don't think I will ever get back with him, do you?
Nah, I don't think that.
He said confidently. Good, because I love you, only you, she said, taking his hand. as they sat at the table. Sonia stared down at her cell phone, which had no signal at all. She sighed and closed it shut as the waitress sat the check on the table.
What's wrong? You were expecting a call?
He asked, pulling out some cash. No, but I need to make a call, and I don't have any bars out here.
Who you need to call?
My mother, she said, her eyes moving over to a payphone outside. I'll be right back. She slid out of the booth. Sonia called Gloria, but got no answer. Then she left a message, informing her that she was on a trip with Javier, but had no cell service. Next, she called Nate, ready to apologize for not being able to go up to Albany. But just after one ring, Javier's hand was on the small of her back, and he was standing close beside her. Sonia hung up the phone. Then Javier asked,
Did I interrupt your call?
No, my mother didn't answer. He nodded, then told her that they should go. They still had a few hours of driving to do. An hour later, they were taking another pit stop, this time at a Walmart. It was the first time Sonia had ever been in one, and after she stepped inside the store, she looked around in awe. It was a grocery store the size of a Macy's. Nothing like tiny little Seatown or Western Beef. As they moved from aisle to aisle, Javier filled their huge cart to the brim with stuff. Tons of food and everyday products like cleaning supplies. And then a bunch of DVDs. She was so confused on this surprise location. As they strolled through the frigid frozen food section, Sonia went close against Javier's warm body, his arm snug around her waist. Let's get some ice cream, she said, opening the huge glass door to the freezer case.
We're still 2 hours away, so it might melt.
She sighed, then returned the Ben and Jerry's to the shelf. If it's 2 hours away, why are we getting stuff now instead of shopping somewhere closer?
Because this is the closest store.
Javier said. Then he opened the freezer door again, grabbing 4 pints of ice cream. I thought if you said it might melt.
I'll buy a cooler and some ice.
He said. Sonia smiled a little, taking his hand. It was a struggle to stuff all their purchases into the car, but they somehow got everything to fit. Things between them finally seemed to be warming up. Still not normal, but the ice was definitely starting to thaw. As they rode in silence, Sonia's hand in Javier's, he turned off the main road, his tires crunching as they pulled onto a long, snaking gravel path that disappeared into the thick woods. The car kicked up dust as they drove deeper and deeper into the forest, so thick the sunlight turned green and hazy, filtering through the leaves. It felt like they were driving into the belly of some ancient forest, the kind where fairy tales go wrong. The car twisted and turned, climbing like this path didn't want anyone finding what was at the end of it. Branches scratched against the car's paint job, and the tiny road seemed like it would never end. Then, just when Sonia was about to ask if they had taken a wrong turn, the trees finally parted, revealing a majestic lake house. It wasn't some rustic cabin. This was a straight-up mansion made of wood and glass, looking out over the still dark water. After Javier killed the engine, Sonia followed him out, stepping onto the soft ground. She took a deep breath of the warm, clean air that was thick with the smell of pine and damp earth. Javier, where are we?
My place. You like it?
He asked with a hint of pride in his voice. It's nice, she said weakly, staring around at the wilderness. The house was absolutely beautiful, but it was isolated, real isolated. The next thing Sonia did was pull out her phone. She already knew there was no way she'd have cell service all the way out there in the middle of nowhere, but checked anyway. Still no service, she sighed, snapping her phone shut. You got a house phone in there, right?
Nah, I don't.
He said, already pulling bags from the trunk. Sonia's eyes widened. No phone at all? What if something happens, like an emergency? Javier paused with a box of cereal in his hand.
What kind of emergency we gonna have out here?
I don't know. A bear tries to eat us. Or we fall off that dock and drown in the lake. He just walked toward the house saying,
Worry too much. We'll be fine.
In the kitchen, Sonia stuffed food into the huge stainless steel fridge until no more food would fit. Javier, why did you buy so much? We'll only be here for a week.
Better to have too much than too little. The store ain't closed, so it's best we prepare.
Sonia nodded, trying to shove a gallon of milk into the fridge.
Besides, you can put the rest of the stuff in here.
He added, pointing to a white, deep freezer tucked into the corner of a huge kitchen.
And we'll have food for the next time we come out here.
Once the last can of baked beans and box of cereal found a spot, Javier took Sonia's hand to give her a tour. He was starting to seem something like his normal self as he smiled for the first time all day, leading her out of the kitchen. Inside the massive living room were high ceilings, cathedral high, with some thick, rough-cut wooden beams running across the ceiling. One entire wall in the living room, from the floor to the ceiling, was pure glass. Sunlight streamed in through the window, making the polished wood floor gleam like honey. The view out the window was that dark, still lake and the endless wall of pine trees surrounding it. It felt like the whole forest was invited inside the house, but keeping a distance behind the glass. On the other side of the room was a fireplace that looked like it was ripped right out of some medieval castle. Huge gravestones stacked high, with a mantelpiece made of a single thick slab of dark wood. In the middle of the room sat the couches, deep brown leather that looked soft like butter, the kind you sink into and never want to get up from. And on those honey-covered floors with thick plush rugs scattered around, softening their footsteps as Javier led her to a staircase. Upstairs, the bedrooms were just as impressive. Each one had its own bathroom, and the master suite was like its own private apartment, with sofas, a fat recliner, and a small cafe table with matching chairs. And the walk-in closet was the size of Sonia's bedroom back in the Bronx. A huge king-size bed dominated the room and was piled high with what looked like 1,000,000 pillows. Its high-quality comforter was some deep forest green color matching the gigantic trees outside. There was another wall of glass looking out over the lake. Higher up now, the view was insane, like being perched in a giant luxury treehouse. Everything chosen just right, fitting together, feeling expensive and comfortable all at the same time. It was the kind of house you saw in movies and figured nobody actually lived like that. Then, after walking through room after room of pure luxury, sunlight, and soft leather, where everything felt like a warm hug dipped in money, Javier led her to a plain door tucked away, almost hidden in the kitchen.
Last stop.
He said, his voice flat again. He typed in a long series of numbers on a keypad that unlocked the door. Then they headed downstairs into darkness. The basement instantly felt different. It was colder down there, like the house's warmth didn't reach that deep. The basement was finished technically, but nothing like the rest of the house. It was basic with low ceilings and bare concrete floors. Sonia followed him down a long, narrow hallway that seemed like a tunnel with no end. She couldn't see a thing except the vague shape of his back moving ahead. Then finally, he stopped and opened the door, reaching inside the room and flipping a switch. A faint red light flickered on, revealing a small room, maybe 8 by 8, made entirely of wood, wooden planks from the floors, the walls, even the low ceiling. And bolted to 3 other walls were simple wooden benches. No windows, no pictures, nothing, just wood, like the inside of a crate or a cell. What kind of room is this? He stepped inside, pulling her in. Then he flipped another switch. The room started to fill with soft yet intense heat.
It's a sauna. You gonna love me here, since you always so cold.
He joked. Sonia smiled. That's because you always keep the AC on for a blast. Javier flipped off the light and the heat. Then the two stepped back into the hall, moving down the narrow concrete path until they reached another door. He opened it, reached in, and hit the light, causing Sonia's blood to run cold. There were no benches in there, just walls. Walls lined with guns. Rifles, shotguns, things with scopes, hanging neat in racks like tools in some psycho's workshop. Below them, shelves stacked high with ammo boxes of all sizes. When she went over to Javier, he had more pride showing off his gun room than he did the $1 million views upstairs. This room, a bunch of arsenal in the basement. This is what got him lit up. You got a lot of guns. Her eyes couldn't stop scanning the racks. You like to hunt or something? He shrugged casually, running his hands down her back.
Nah, not really hunting.
He said, with his eyes still on the guns.
I can teach you how to use them.
Sonia shook her head slowly, then said in a low tone, I hate guns. He gave her a nod, like suddenly he remembered how she clammed up during the shooting at the office not too long ago. Later that day, while Nate was in the middle of a rooftop party in Manhattan, his mind was on Sonia. He'd gotten a missed call from some unfamiliar number earlier that day, but whoever it was hung up right after the first ring. He didn't suspect it was her until he texted and called to set up a time for them to drive to Albany the next day, but she didn't respond for hours. Something in his gut wasn't sitting right. He pushed those feelings down, continued with his day, but checking his phone every 5 minutes for a reply. But now as the sun was setting, and he still hadn't heard from her, he was worried. Nate stepped over to the building's edge, away from the other partygoers, and called Sonia's old number, the number to her house up in the Bronx. Nate reintroduced himself to Gloria, then asked if Sonia was there.
No, she went on a trip. Is something wrong?
No, everything is fine. We were supposed to meet up tomorrow, but her phone keeps going to voicemail. But you spoke to her.
No, she left a message saying she didn't have a signal where she's at.
Nate thanked Gloria, then ended their short phone call. But even after getting the update, he still felt uneasy. Something felt off, and his stomach was still in knots. That night, Sonia stood on the thick rug in the bedroom, looking out at that pitch-black lake shimmering in the moonlight. She knew she should have felt ecstatic, and part of her was. The place was incredible, and she was with her love. But just like at the brownstone, Javier was in his strange little mood. She glanced back at him as he stared straight ahead at the TV. At first, Javier ignored her stare. Then he paused the DVD, looking over at her.
What's up?
You're not gonna tell me what's going on with you?
What you mean?
Why you acting so weird? I told you that I didn't want to be with Rico.
I know that.
Well, there what? He stared into her eyes, then asked.
Where'd you go last night?
Javier could see it, the flicker of some sort of secret, as she avoided his eyes and walked over to the bed. I told you, I was working.
What kind of work?
What'd you say?
I asked what kind of work you doing. Rita and Louisa in the Bahamas. The office is closed and school is out. So what kind of work you got at 9 o'clock at night?
I'm working with the private investigator.
He still don't know where Blue is?
No, not yet.
If he don't have any new information, then why is he contacting you so much? And why y'all meeting up?
Sonia saw the rare flicker of jealousy crossing Javier's eyes. The memories of Rico's reaction to Nate flashed in her mind. We're working on another case.
A case that you can't tell me about.
He stared at her, waiting for an explanation, but she was silent.
We keeping secrets now? What are y'all working on?
His usual calm was gone, and his voice was tight. Javier, you trust me, right?
Yeah, I trust you. If I didn't, you wouldn't be here right now.
She sighed, then begrudgingly told him. He's helping me find my father's killer. Javier's eyes ran over her face with concern. He swallowed hard, then asked in a tender tone.
Why was you afraid to tell me about this investigation?
Because I thought you would react the same way Rico did when I told him about it 2 years ago. He got all jealous that I was working with the investigator. He made up a whole lie about finding the man who killed my father, just so I could have the case dropped. She shook her head like she was disappointed in herself all over again. I promised myself I wasn't gonna make that same mistake twice. Javier cupped her chin in his palm, pulling her face to his.
I'm not Rico.
I know.
Then you should know that I'm not the jealous type. I don't let a lot of people in my life because I don't trust nobody. But you here right now, where I would never let anybody else come. And you got a key to my house.
Then he struts his words, saying,
I trust you. So from now on, don't be scared to tell me anything. I don't want us to have secrets.
She gave him a nod, then Javier asked.
So is this PR close to finding the killer?
Sonia sighed. I honestly don't think so. He's been looking into this case for 2 years, and he said the longer the case goes unsolved, the harder it'll be to solve. Nobody saw anything, and every time we think we get somewhere, it's like a dead end.
I'm sorry.
He said, trying to sound as sympathetic as he could. It's all right. At first, I just wanted the killer found so I could have some sort of security. I was so worried about the people who shot me and my father coming back for me. But it's been so long, and nobody's done anything to me. I'm honestly starting to think that everything's gonna be okay, she said with a weak nod. I mean, I still want justice, but I'm just gonna hand it over to God. Pray that He'll take care of everything for me. Javier pulled her close.
I won't ever let anything happen to you. I'll keep you safe.
Something about his words felt funny to Sonia. It was the same promise Rico once made. She quickly shook off the feelings. reminded herself that Rico and Javier were two totally different people. There was no manipulation here. Javier was the real deal. She cuddled against his chest, his strong embrace driving all her worries away. Everything between them back to normal again. The Javier she knew and loved was back, and everything was gonna be perfect. As they lay, Javier reached over to the nightstand and pulled a Walmart bag out of his drawer. "What is this?" Sonia laughed, pulling out a bright yellow inner tube. "When did you get this? I didn't even see you pick it up."
I made sure you was looking the other way.
She laughed loudly. "You're so sneaky." She kissed his lips. The next day, the sun was already high and hot when Javier finished inflating Sonia's inner tube. Now she was floating in a dark lake with a bright yellow donut snug around her waist. Javier was on the dock a few feet away, kicked back on a lawn chair, his face buried in a thick book, the cover reading something about money and finance. "We should get a boat," Sonia called to him out of nowhere. He smirked, looking down at her.
You know how to drive a boat.
"No, but how hard could it be?"
Sonny, you don't even know how to drive a car.
He laughed as she pulled herself off the ladder, climbing out. She settled his lap, sopping wet and dripping water onto his book. He slid his hand onto her waist and tossed his book onto the dock. "Can you teach me how to drive?"
I ain't know you wanted to learn. But yeah, I can teach you.
I didn't want to learn before. I figured in the city, I can always catch a train or a cab. But what if we don't live in the city forever and we move somewhere without trains or buses? Javier looked into her eyes surprised, then asked,
If we live somewhere else?
"Yeah, sometimes I just think about us moving away from the city, being together for real, like we are right now, like we are when we go on our trips."
Where you want to live?
He asked, playing along. She shrugged. "Somewhere far, Texas or Arizona." He stroked her thigh, looking into her eyes.
You wouldn't miss your family.
She sighed. The thought of being so far away from them was always the downside to her little fantasies. Then Javier said,
Or we could say somewhere like that. Maybe even here. You'll be close enough to them living here, right?
Sonia made a face. "But then we would be stuck in the woods, with literally no people around."
That sounds good to me. Just us and our 8 kids.
She laughed, wrapping her arms over his shoulders.
But you having fun so far, right?
She nodded with a smile.
Good. 'Cause I was thinking we could stay here a few more weeks.
"Weeks?" she asked with a frown.
Yeah. Get some rest, enjoy the peace, and spend some real time together.
"I would really like that, but I have to get back to the city. I got work to do."
We then will use us still a vacation for another week. And after they get back, I can speak to my aunt about giving you more time off. Paid time off.
"But I'm also working on my father's case."
What you paying that PI for? You don't need to do any work. Just let him solve the case.
"I'm not being him." His eyes cut into hers, sharp with suspicion. "Javier, don't look at me like that. You said you're not the jealous type."
I'm not jealous, but I'm not stupid either. Why he doing all this for free?
He just wants the case solved too. Javier was silent, still staring at her. "You said you trust me."
I trust you, but I don't even know him.
Sonia sighed, then Javier pulled her close.
Share his place with you. This place I love so much. I brought all your favorite DVDs and even copped a couple of bootlegs, so it's like we got the movies.
he said with a smile, making her smile too.
You want to spend time with me, right?
You know I do.
Okay then, let that PI handle the case itself.
She nodded. All right, but I'll need to call him. Javier was sighing heavy before she could even finish her sentence. I need to at least let him know that I can't help out. Plus, I need to let my mother know that I'll be out here for a few more weeks. He gave her a nod.
We'll go back into town in a few days so you can make your call.
He said, then kissed her lips. While Sonia was kicking back lakeside, Nate was a few hours away in Albany, breathing air thick enough to chew. Summer midday in the city meant suffocating heat, and Brianna's little house felt like all the hot air was trapped inside with them. He sat stiffly in the worn-out recliner, and across from him sat Brianna, who seemed almost lost in the cushions of the old floor-print couch. She was tiny and frail. The sickness had hollowed out her face, stretching her light brown skin tight over sharp cheekbones. There were dark circles under her eyes and a few lesions, dark purple, bruise-like patches scattered across her visible skin, on her face, her slender neck, and thin arms poking out from the loose t-shirt. Kaposi sarcoma, the ugly signature of advanced AIDS. Between coughs and sips of water, she told Nate all about the girl from her high school who introduced her to the lifestyle. Some girl named Shanae, who was a few years older than her. A cool senior who befriended Brianna when she was just a lowly freshman. The two hit it off and had a quick friendship. Then, before Brianna knew it, she was being invited to some of the most glamorous parties she'd ever seen.
I was only 15 years old and being invited to places with some real important people.
The memory seemed to puff her up for a second. A ghost of the girl she used to be.
People who could be with anybody, and they chose me.
People like who?
Nate asked gently, keeping his voice low. The light inside her dimmed fast, and she hesitated to answer. Like seeing the names out loud was dangerous even now.
A few actors, some politicians, even some British royalty. But mostly it was just a bunch of random rich dudes. You know, the kind that work down on Wall Street.
She said, looking down at her hands, the lesions stark against her caramel skin.
Those Wall Street dudes had a lot of parties, and they were always inviting us girls. We went to yacht parties, parties in the Hamptons. They even flew us out overseas every now and then. The man I worked for, the one who ran the website, even owned an island.
He owned an island.
Me asked, like it sounded ridiculous.
Yes,
She said with a chuckle.
he owned the whole thing.
Then her smile died completely as memories of the island flooded her mind.
A lot of bad stuff went down on that island.
She whispered, staring at something only she could see. Nate wanted to ask what kind of bad stuff, but it felt wrong. Too rough for how fragile she was. He wished Sonia was there. She could handle the heavy lifting, the prying into a girl's clearly painful past. So instead, he would simply focus on getting the facts. He asked for the name of the man who owned the island, but Brianna quickly shook her head no, and her voice was sharp with sudden fear.
I can't tell you that.
No one will know that the information came from you.
You don't understand what those people were capable of.
Then she said in a whisper, even though they were all alone,
The man I used to work for used to have people killed. At least that's what some of the girls said. That's why these important people went to him via services. They could trust that no one was ever going to find out.
So that's why none of the girls ever went forward and told the cops. They were afraid of being killed.
Yeah, but some of them actually did go to the cops. They didn't care about the risk, and the cop didn't do anything anyway. Our boss was arrested a few times, but cops had evidence against him, but he still got to go free.
How was he able to go free?
He knows people. He had pull everywhere. Nobody can touch him. Definitely not you working at some PI firm. Even if you get the evidence to the police and have him arrested, he'll go free like he did before.
She said, her voice low with disappointment.
Who owns the island and the website? I know you may think there's no taking him down, but I can at least try to make sure he doesn't traffic any other 15-year-old girls. And like I said, I promise you'll be safe. No one will know the info came from you.
Her eyes, sunken but intense, drilled into him, searching his face again, weighing his words like she was looking for any hint of deceit. Then she let out a shaky breath.
Jerry Finkelstein. They call his place Finkelstein Island.
Nate scribbled the name in his little notepad.
He had the whole island.
Brianna added, her voice weaker now.
A huge compound with his own fleet of jets, flying out all his people in private.
She trailed off. Her rough, rattling cough echoed through the living room. Later that night, back at the lake, while Sonia showered, Javier sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at her cell phone. In the dark bedroom, the tiny screen lit up his tense face as his thumb worked the buttons, scrolling through her text messages. His eyes scanned quickly as he searched for clues, anything that hinted at what they dug up on the case. He read each message, but they were all the same. A bunch of short, quick texts. Meeting confirmed. Need to discuss details. Tuesday at 2. The second the shower cut off and silence hit the room, Javier snapped Sonia's phone shut, then returned her to the tiny bed pocket of her shorts, crumpled on the floor. He nudged her clothes with his foot, making sure they was untouched. Then climbed back into bed, propping himself against the pillows and snatching the remote from the nightstand. By the time Sonia stepped out of the bathroom, dressed in her pajamas, he looked like he had been there the whole time, bored and waited for her. She flew across the cold bedroom as the icy AC hit her still damp skin. "Huh, why do you always have the AC up so high?" she asked, melting against his warm body. He smiled, yanking the covers over them.
"'Cause I like it when you gotta get all up under me like this to stay warm."
Sonia tilted her face up, and his lips found hers in the dim light. A week can feel like a lifetime or no time at all, especially stranded out at that lakehouse. Days blurred into a pattern of sunlight on the water, too much food, and nights where Sonia was wrapped up tight against Javier. It felt comfortable, mostly, except for the locked basement door, the arsenal downstairs, and the hours Javier spent down there. He was just coming up from the basement, stepping into the kitchen, while Sonia stood surrounded by stainless steel as she chopped onions. "What you been doing down there for so long?"
Cleaning some guards.
He said, pressing his chest tight against her back. He kissed her neck and gave her waist a tight squeeze before walking over to the fridge.
"What you making?"
"Spaghetti," she said, dropping the onions into the sizzling skillet.
"You been eating spaghetti all week."
He commented, pulling out some ice cream. "We can always eat cereal," she said, half joking.
"The next time we go to Walmart, I'm buying you some cookbooks. I don't think you know how to make nothing but spaghetti.
I know how to cook up his stuff. Sonia laughed, rolling her eyes. And yeah, you can buy the cookbooks, then make dinner for me.
Yeah, we can do that.
For real though, when are we going back into town? You told me we'd go back days ago. I need to call my mother and your aunt. Let them know that I won't be back for a couple of weeks.
Tomorrow.
You've been saying tomorrow for days now.
Sonny, it's a 6-hour round trip drive. You left a message with your mother, and we still have food.
She sighed loudly.
But since I'm tired of spaghetti, we'll go back into town first thing tomorrow and get you some cookbooks.
He grabbed her by the waist.
I'll even take you out to eat.
Sonia smiled. Where we going?
The diner.
He said like it was obvious. That place wasn't even good.
Yeah, but that's what we got.
He said, kissing her lips. Maybe it was the real threat of eating spaghetti for the 8th day straight, but Javier actually kept his word. First thing the next morning, they were bumping down that long gravel driveway, leaving the too quiet lake house behind. Sonia felt the knot loosen in her chest, just seeing the highway again. Hours later, the familiar, slightly sad-looking diner came into view. Javier pulled into the parking lot, and before he could even cut the engine, Sonia was rummaging through her purse, digging for the change she desperately needed. That payphone bolted to the diner's outside wall looked like a beacon. She hopped out of the car, clutching a fistful of quarters, then started feeding them into the slot, the phone heavy in her hand as she waited for it to ring. She glanced over her shoulder, noticing Javier lingering nearby. Jav, where you going? Can you order me some pancakes and sausage? She asked, hoping he'd get the hint and go inside. He gave her a nod, slowly making his way into the diner. Hey, Ma. Sonia smiled wide.
Sonny, where you at?
Me and Javier up at his lake house.
Lakehouse. Sounds fancy.
Gloria laughed. Yeah, it's fancy, but it's real boring at the same time. Just a bunch of woods and water.
Where's this lakehouse?
Upstate, Javier said Lake Placid isn't far from us.
Lake Placid? That's pretty far from the city.
I know. It took us over 6 hours to drive here.
Well, when are you coming back?
I'm not sure yet.
Must be nice. Your boss is just letting you take all his time off?
Yeah, Javier's gonna talk to his aunt. Make sure I get time off with pay. She laughed weakly.
Well, I miss you. And so does Anna. She keeps calling here every other day, checking to see if you're back. Her father is throwing some kind of engagement party up at the park. Wish you could come to it.
Me too, Sonia sighed.
Couldn't you just come back on a bus or something? Just for a day or two. Then go back out to the lake house with Javier.
Yeah, I'll check for the nearest bus station. Next, she called Nate.
Where you at?
He asked with slight urgency, not bothering with any casual hellos. I'm out of town on a little vacation with my boyfriend, and I don't have a cell signal.
Yeah, your mother told me.
I'll be away for a couple more weeks if I can't catch a bus back to the city anytime soon.
For a couple of weeks.
I'm so sorry, Nate. This wasn't a planned trip. I really wanted to go to Albany to visit Brianna with you.
It's fine. I spoke to her and everything went well. I'm just happy to hear from you. I was starting to get worried for a minute.
Nate's voice began to fade.
Felt like something was off. But everything is good, right?
Yeah, everything is fine. I'm having fun up here. Then Sonia heard the clanking of dishes in the background and a woman's voice. Is now a bad time to talk?
No, I can talk.
he said, leaving the kitchen and stepping out onto the terrace, which overlooked the Atlantic Ocean.
So where you staying?
A small town a few miles from Lake Placid.
What's the name of the town?
I'm not for sure. Nate was silent for a second before asking.
So you don't have an address?
I don't. Then the woman's voice from before was clearer as she announced to Nate that somebody named Nisha needed a ride from the train station. Nate informed the woman that he would leave out in a minute. Do you need to get off the phone?
Nah, I'm gonna pick up my little sister, but you call my cell. I can talk while I drive.
He assured her. Something was tugging at him, a sense that something wasn't right and he didn't want to let her go.
You sure you okay?
Yes, Nate, she laughed. I'm sure.
It's just that working on these missing girl cases, and now you being MIA.
His voice trailed off. Yeah, but I'm not missing or kidnapped. I'm fine. Do you assure him? He was silent, then told her to look for a street sign when they returned to the house, or maybe some mail where she got inside so she could have the address. She assured him that she would. Then, as Javier stared at her through the window, lifting her plate of food, she told Nate that she had to go.